There's a lot more people talking about AI projects than actually building them. Today, we're going to meet Anders Leander. He's an AI expert who specializes in making companies more efficient with AI technologies. So, over the next 20 minutes, we'll talk with him about his insights and experience and hopefully learn something that we can bring back to our companies. I'm Magnus Oxenwaldt, and you're listening to Future Bytes podcast, where we focus on creating true value from AI projects. And I promise to give you actionable insights throughout this podcast that you can immediately use to transform your business. But first, Anders, tell us about yourself and what you're going to tell us about today.
Absolutely. My name is Anders. I'm an AI advisor here at Columbus in our data and AI practice. And I'm also project manager for many of our AI projects. And I'm going to talk about what we have done for a client, Mad Engine, what the benefits are for the customer in this case, some of the obstacles that we came across in this project, and then in the end, some key takeaways.
And you're being slightly modest, I think, because the value this customer got from your input and the things you delivered are making them multiple times more efficient, right? It's a huge impact to their organization. So that's going to be really interesting to hear about how you accomplish that with just generative AI, because there's a lot of people out there trying to do generative AI projects, but a lot of them fail, right?
Yes. Let's say. So if we start with what we actually did here. So it's a generative AI project and for Mad Engine. They're based out of California and Mexico. And they sell licensed products such as apparel from Star Wars, Disney, Marvel, and many others. It could be clothes, print on demand, etc. And they sell them through channels such as Macy's and Target in the US and also Amazon.com. And to sell through those channels, they need to describe their products, basically. So if they have a white t-shirt from the show Frozen with Elsa and Anna on it, they need to tell that it's a white t-shirt, that's a color, characters, Elsa and Anna. The theme could be family friendship, for instance, if that's what the image shows. So what they do then is that they have users that analyze all their art images and then write down these tags. So they tag the items. Look at the image, write it down in an Excel sheet, and then that's uploaded to their e-com solution. So what we've done here is to let AI do this analysis or a part of the analysis anyhow. So analyze it, tag it, metadata. And there are various ways to do this. One is obviously the built-in knowledge of the latest generative AI models and the vision feature. So everything before the knowledge cutoff date it has a pretty good understanding of who Elsa and Anna is, or Luke or Yoda from Star Wars. You can also rely on the historical data because they have tagged a lot of images before. So you can look at that, how we historically described an image like this. And then the third case is when you have a new show that's not with new characters. Then how do we do then? Well, then the users will have to build a custom knowledge base. It only requires a few sample images in various situations, and then they do the descriptions. So you could say it's like a RAG-based approach, but we also rely a lot on the knowledge of the latest GPT models.
A lot of things here to condense or to understand. So first off, you mentioned that in the past, before they got this solution from you, they were a bunch of people. And given the fact their customers are like Macy's, Amazon's and whatnot, this must be a big company, right? So there's a lot of users sitting there around tagging these media and updating these Excel spreadsheets. It's not just one or two people, right? So it's a lot of people.
Yes. So it's about 10 people or so.
So all right. And you're saying that you had cutoff of the date as well. So it's important that these models you use, they understand the media they're working with. But for the new shows, you had to go with a different solution where you don't have the knowledge inside these large language models.
So then you take a few sample images and then you describe them. So teaching the model what this show is about, what this character is, how this character is related to other characters in the show. For instance, we have Vaiana coming out now, or Moana, as it's called in outside Europe. She has a sister in that show that was an unknown character before, so we have to describe that this is this person and it's Vaiana's sister. And then whenever it's a new show, we look into the new custom knowledge base that they
You
can
must
use.
be the best daddy in the neighborhood because all these Hollywood shows, right? And all these Disney shows coming out, because that's what you're working with in the last months.
Yes, I looked at a few images of the next Vaiana show. Yes.
Hmm.
So then the benefits then and potential next step. I mean, obviously this makes the current operations more efficient. They can have fewer employees focus on this particular task, looking at images and then writing what they see. But then if you think on the next step, I mean, obviously we designed this solution based on what the current state process is about and the limitations. And that was designed to be done by humans and limited on the time and the skill that these humans have. So you can see as a next step, what if you let could support, rather than searching for a t-shirt of Elsa and Anna, what if someone wants to search for a nice t-shirt for a 6-year-old going to a birthday party? And how do you connect that with, well, would be a nice product for that. To do that, you would need to tag it appropriately to be relevant for more and more advanced searches for users. So you don't need to stop with this case.
So you're building a platform that's multi-use, so you can use it in various channels. This company is planning to use it elsewhere, or is it something you're working with other customers to build upon?
I mean, that's certainly something they could do, but the idea here is that you don't need to stop the innovation by doing the same thing that you've done before, but faster and cheaper. You could also look at things that weren't economically viable or technically possible before. And I'd say this is a common phenomenon with AI and also all new tech, is that first you think of incremental improvements to replace
Yeah.
part of a process that you have now. And that process was designed for the tech of yesterday, you could say. So once you replace that part, then you naturally start to think about what are the things that we couldn't do before, but we can do now. And that's easy to do once you've seen what the technology can do by replacing your current processes.
You haven't only changed or automated things for them. You open their eyes to new possibilities, essentially. That's what you've
I,
done.
I hope so. I hope so. But normally you need to take this first step of making whatever you do today more efficient, and then you can start to be innovative and think about things you could do tomorrow. And there's a lot of talk about how AI will support innovation in the future and go beyond the stuff of inefficiency. But I've found to be at that stage and have that conversation and be mature, you need to land these major efficiency improvements first. And it's better to take that next step. So,
So this all sounds amazing. So you replaced humans with generative AI for this tagging process. Can we already see now quantifiable how much did they save in comparison to what they spent in the past for the same processes?
well, first off, we are not entirely replacing humans because this is a human augmented case.
Mhm.
Basically, out of all the tags we selected, a number that is where the technology works today. Some we're not there yet because they might be a bit too subjective. So we need the users to write those. And they also need to review the output of the AI solution because it's never 100% correct. we're happy if it's 95% correct. But to get it from 95 to 100, that will require a lot more work. So this is a human in the loop case. And yes, there is a business case, but I can't go into the specifics of that. If we go into some of the obstacles that we faced in this project, then the first one is I think that everyone faces. It's that Gen AI makes mistakes from time to time. So this is quite common. Most of the time it gets it correct, but sometimes it would spit out things like, I cannot answer that question, even though it has all the information needed to answer it. Or we specifically tell it to list the outputs as a list, but in 1% of the cases, it gives you a long text instead. There are various ways to do this. One is to correct it with logic in the code. If it's a common mistake, then if you get this response, just send in the request again. You can work with prompt engineering, obviously. That's the first step, to do a few short prompts with, this is the input, should result in this output, etc. We haven't done it as much in this project. We do it in other projects where you have other models to check the answer, and then maybe a third or fourth model to look at two answers and then mediate and then make the final decision of what the answer should be. So clever prompt engineering, a few shot is needed in almost all Gen AI cases that I came with. This is for manual review by a user. We don't need it to be 100% of the correct. So it would take a lot more effort to get from 95% to 100%. So it's not the end of the world if it makes a few mistakes here and there, as long as it's not too many.
So the things you developed so far and implemented, they require some sort of ongoing maintenance, basically, and monitoring is what you're saying, to make sure it
Yeah.
upholds.
The user needs to review the results, do some changes sometimes because maybe they have decided to market something in a different way to be a short-term thing for Halloween or whatnot. So they need to review, and then whenever they have a new show, obviously they need to update the knowledge base.
Yes, I realized there's so much more than just technology, right? So you need to understand the process, you understand how to make this work. The generative AI is just one ingredient of many to make this solution actually work in a good way for the customer. So you need to cover all of those aspects, I guess.
Absolutely. And I mean, generative AI is only one part of the solution here. We have this interfacing other applications upstream and downstream, where we need to, from an infrastructure and integration part, that was most of the work we did, to integrate with UAT and test environments of other systems, make sure that they had the correct test data in those, because the test data they had before weren't really matching what we needed for this project. So that was most of the work we did. And all of this we made on, you could say, a developing tech platform, so OpenAI on Azure and also Fabric. There are things changing every month where to get access to the latest model, you need to request access. Some months you need to request access to the second previous models if you want to have a certain quota in a certain region. And then at some time you don't need to do that. So it's all changing all the time. Not all models are available in all regions. So maybe a customer has a policy to only use a certain region. What do you do if the model you want to do is not available there? Or also the Microsoft on Azure, the content moderation feature is at the moment working. So you could say it flags way too many images and texts as inappropriate, and you don't have the option to turn it off by default. You need to send in a request to Microsoft to be able to turn it off, and that can take a couple of weeks to get it approved. And most of the time it's correct, but we had it catch number of images. So just Snow White walking in the forest, that was inappropriate. Another case, we had article numbers and descriptions for a manufacturing company of spare parts. Many of those spare parts were flagged as inappropriate. I don't know why. So
They're
ready.
they're being overcautious. It sounds like they're being super
Yes.
safe.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand them that they want to do that, but essentially the first thing you need to do in an AI project is to fill in the form to be able to disable the content moderation at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds not so intuitive, to be honest.
Yeah.
Should be something working for you and as safekeeping. Right. What other, so I can imagine, so not only is it a new technology, it's a new technology for the platforms that you use.
Mhm.
So I bet you struggle at times understanding where the issue was, because sometimes it's in the platform, sometimes it's
Yeah.
what you do. And that must be a challenge for sure.
Yes, in particular with Fabric, because that's a little bit more immature also. So there are some things there that developers aren't used to. It behaves slightly different. I wouldn't say it's wrong or a defect, but many things are slightly different. And there are some features missing. To be very specific, you can't, or we couldn't find a way to access OpenAI as a private endpoint. You can't do that from Fabric. It has to be public. And then the security organization, they had it as a requirement that all endpoints need to be private. Well, the workaround, the key vault is private, and that's where you get the key to the endpoint. So that worked out, but then you need to ask for a an exception in that case. And I don't know why it is not possible from Fabric yet to access OpenAI private endpoints, but minor things like that. Not biggest, but it makes it a bit more challenging to work, and you need some lead time, especially with permissions and that you need from Microsoft to turn off content moderation, access models in different regions, etc.
So is it like if you go into the next project, which is similar, has similar patterns,
Mm.
would you know exactly how to do this, or would it still be like a challenge?
Maybe, but then there will be new models, new updates, new limitations in regions, and some won't be a problem. So it's hard to anticipate what will be because everything's changing so much. And also some other work that you might need to do, setting up agents that quality check each other, etc. And then you have the next model, which I think the latest O1 Pro model, it has that built in. So they wrap more and more around that. I think there is some type of
Mm.
majority vote thing going on in the latest O1 Pro model, for instance. So then you don't need that anymore. But then maybe the cost is higher or lower. So it's you need to look at the technology right this time and see what is the solution you're going to build. And maybe that will be obsolete in 6 months. And then you need to,
So you need to stay in the present and understand which models works the best and which infrastructure is the best. Because I guess now you're mentioning a bunch of Microsoft technologies and OpenAI, but you could do
Mm.
this essentially anywhere, right? And what you
Yes.
truly are becoming is sort of an experts of these models to understand how they actually can do the work for you.
And it's whatever a new model is really, it's not that the solution that you built before based on older models is not usable anymore. It's just be that if you did the project 6 months, it might be easier or not. You don't know that. But that doesn't
No.
mean it was a waste of having, because the value is the time you have it in production. If it's more efficient from day one, then
Yeah.
it's to your benefit from day one. It doesn't matter if you can do it even better in 1 year or 2 years time.
So the horizon here is extremely short, right? So
Yes.
when you're choosing these projects, you better have return on the investment almost immediately. And you're not mentioning any numbers, but I know that this is, despite all these challenges you're mentioning, they want this,
Well,
right? They're asking for it and they're using it in a valuable way.
yeah, it depends. If the purpose is only to get business case here and now for this particular solution, then yes. But it's the bigger value is that this is a stepping stone and learning for the organization how to use generative AI in various ways, because then you're more prepared when even more powerful models come in 1 or 2 years time. And it's the organizational ability to integrate AI in the work. That's the limiting
Mm,
factor. Technology
I
is
see.
moving much faster than organizations can uh, absorb it, you say. So
Yeah.
organizational inertia that's reducing, that is value in itself, I would say. Maybe the biggest value.
So we're coming to the end quickly, but for this customer, if you were to think about any takeaways that you would send off to their listeners thinking of doing the same thing, like using these engines to tag media in the purpose of commercializing processes and automating processes similar to this company. What would be the key takeaways to think about before they're heading into such a project?
See, during the project, you should start with the AI components early. So don't wait until you have all the pipelines and all the data engineering set up, because it can be quite tricky. Start with some in parallel to work on that. You have experimented with simple models, more difficult models, all the different ways to set up agents, etc. So start with that first. Anticipate that can be some lead time in this, requesting access to resources, waiting for Microsoft approvals, maybe some defects in the platform here and there. So sometimes it's challenging to do a very fast and intensive project. There will be some lead time involved. Also, focus on human in the loop use cases. I think that's where you should start. Don't aim to have something completely automated. It's much easier to get something that's 90 to 95% correct than 100% correct. So look for those use cases first, and then you can think of human out of the loop as maybe second or third step.
Brilliant. Thanks for all that. Last question on that human in the loop. Would it change the existing roles to something else? Would it change their job description you working with this? Or can you use the same people that you used before doing the same work, but just enhancing them with this technology?
I can't say for every case, but in this case, yes, definitely. There are other ways you
No,
could.
nobody fired.
No,
No. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Anders, for all this valuable insight. I think this is a phenomenal case where we actually see use of generative AI in a functioning, successful project, giving absolute benefit back to the customer that's using it. We see so many people talk about generative AI projects, but we finally met somebody here, Anders Leander, who's actually delivering successful projects. So thank you, Anders, for telling us the story about Mad Engine and the things you've done there. And I hope to have you back in a podcast soon. And thanks everyone for listening today. Thanks, Anders, for all your valuable insights. And if I'm one of those companies out there that really want to get started with this, and I don't know whom that could help me with this, and I need to reach out to you, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
yeah, you may contact me through my email, and that you can find in the notes from this podcast down below.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Anders.
Thank you.